Hi, I'm Peter Reinhardt. You're on Pizza Talk, presented by Pizza Quest, and I'm sitting here today with Scott Wiener, our friend and our Pizza Today man on the street. Scott is a regular columnist for years at Pizza Today magazine, and he does the man on the street column. We want him to be part of our man on the street team, and so Scott, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Peter. It's great to see you.
And I see you're in Brooklyn, and in front of your wonderful backdrop there of the slices of pizza. You are
I'm in
a man
my,
who lives for pizza.
yeah, I'm in my pizza studio right now.
I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of Pizza Street and being the man on the street, what is happening on the street? Is anything happening on the street out
It's actually pretty interesting right now on the street. Pizzerias are open, they're delivering and they're doing takeout, and people are buying their pizza. I see it all the time, and it's kind of wild. Pizzerias that never really had to deal with that before are now changing their tune. People are testing new styles to deal with delivery and takeout.
there?
As
Like
you
what kind of
know,
styles? Anything in particular?
well, like all these like super high temperature wood fired places are starting to do lower temperature wood fired so they can deliver a stiffer pizza that will last more in the box.
I see. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Uh, and I know that while you're not on the street today, we're hoping in future episodes to get you out there when we can figure out how to sort of do it remote out there and get some kind of a Wi-Fi connection so that you're out there really in front of some of the places that are doing it. But we're hearing this nationwide that probably of all the sectors of the restaurant business, it seems like the pizza community has responded and pivoted most quickly, and has have found ways to survive and make it happen. What do you see it?
Yeah, well, I think pizzerias are already set up for takeout and delivery for the most part, and it's a food that consumers know and trust to be delivered to their homes. It was one of the earliest home food delivery foods. After the Second World War, pizza really took off, and delivery food took off because of pizza, and pizza took off because of delivery food. So it makes a whole lot of sense that right now, time of crisis, pizza makes sense, and it's something we already know. It's rare that you're going to call up your local steakhouse and say, you know what, can you, I want to get two T-bones delivered to me. It just doesn't enter your brain. You think it's a
Uh,
Indian Thai.
so we're starting to
I
get a
think
little
you don't
little
think of these
Wi-Fi.
white tablecloth foods, which is why pizza has survived.
Well, I'm just going to mention so because in Brooklyn right now, everyone's on Zoom. It seems like so. There's a lot of competition for bandwidth. So every once in a while, your voice breaks up or whatever. So those who are watching, just know that we're just going to stay with Scott through all this, and he'll keep bouncing back in. In fact, let's stop for a second because while many people know you, and anyone who goes to Pizza Expo or read the pizza magazines know who Scott Wiener is, but for many of our viewers who don't know who you are or haven't read the interviews we've done with you on Pizza Quest in the past or your columns, uh, give us a little background on Scott's pizza tours and your whole pizza journey because you're a man who has dedicated his life ever since you graduated from college to pizza, but you're not a pizza restaurant operator. You're a pizza lover. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I always call myself a professional pizza enthusiast. That's my little self-proclaimed title here because there's no better way to describe it. I started running a tour company in 2008. It's called Scott's Pizza Tours. And with those tours, I take people to significant pizzerias around New York City, take them into the kitchens. We talk to owners, pizza makers, and the idea is to understand why New York is a famous pizza city and to understand how each style developed and how they're all produced. So in doing that, I've also started doing some other pizza related projects like writing the column for Pizza Today magazine, working with you with Pizza Quest, and judging pizza competitions.
I know
I
we've
mean,
sat side by side at pizza competitions judging pizzas, which is like, it sounds like a great job, but at the end of the day, you kind of feel like, all right, I can only handle so much pizza.
remember that time we were in Harlem and we ate 50 margarita pizzas in
That's
2 days.
yeah, yeah. And yet the amazing
Still,
thing is that the next day you're bouncing back and you're back on the pizza trail every single day. You never seem to get tired.
no, I remember what you said to me that day was, you know what, just when you thought you've had too many pizza margaritas, one comes up that does the one thing differently and it
Yeah.
resets you.
It's amazing. It's like an amazing world, and I always feel, pardon me, just sort of excited to be a part of it because it never really does get old. It doesn't get old, and you keep reinventing yourself. You've even got your own series, your own TV series. I've seen it on Thrillist. I've seen it on Amazon Prime called Really Dough. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Really Dough is an episode produced by Thrillist. It's a series produced by Thrillist, and in each episode, we visit a different pizzeria and try the weirdest thing that they make. And the two hosts are myself and Mark Iacono from Lucali in Brooklyn. He's a stickler. He's strict
Yeah.
dough, sauce, and cheese, and I'm like, oh, banana peppers, bananas, peppers, chocolate. I'll take it all.
I love it. But Mark always introduces himself as a pizza purist, you know,
Yeah.
and you're like the ecumenical pizza. Any pizza is a good pizza.
Yeah, I feel like
Great dynamic between the two of you guys.
yeah, it's fun because there's a playful tension with it, and with if we disagree, it's not a negative thing.
Yeah.
It's actually helpful, and neither of us is ever really deeply offended by the other person's perspective, which is why I think pizza is so cool because you could argue about thin or thick or crunchy or soft, and at the end of the day, you're both just happy to be talking about the food that you
Although
love. It's
I
not like
will say,
politics.
Mark does do a little serious trash talking with you sometimes, and so it looks like you guys are on the verge of a breakup, and then you somehow kiss and make up. You know?
But the thing about Mark, and the thing about a lot of people of Mark's ilk, is when they rib you, that means they love you.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the best part. And of course, it makes for great television. And so, how many you've
Yeah.
done? Like a lot of episodes of that series, like 2 or 3 seasons, right?
Yeah, we did 20 something episodes, and I don't know if we're doing any more right now because uh, Thrillist has sort of changed up a lot of their staff. So I'm not sure if we're doing any more, but I know a lot of people have been messaging us online and on Instagram saying that they want more episodes. So maybe we'll
Well,
figure something out.
what's cool about the show for me is that you go to a lot of places that none of us are ever going to be able to get to if we don't live in the New York area, and some of them are even outside of New York City. And you've gone, I know it's this down to Philly, you've gone up to Boston, you've gone everywhere in the show. So it's really a pizza quest of its own style. It's your pizza quest, and I love it. And I see some pretty outrageous pizzas. Can you talk about maybe a couple that you think were sort of really push the envelope of what is a pizza and whether you liked it or didn't like it.
Well, I'll never forget the ramen pizza that we had from Tony Baloney's in New
I
Jersey.
talk about that one a lot. Yeah,
Well, because it's,
out of ramen noodles, right?
right. And this is where I actually want to ask you about this because I think a lot of my theory about pizza is derived from a lot of the things you talk about, which is pizza is bread, and bread is this life cycle food, and that it's grain and is yeast. But then you go to something like ramen noodles, and it's made of a dough, okay, but it's not a leavened. Well, it's a wheat-based dough, but it's a noodle. It's not a bread. If that's the base of the pizza, is that bread? And if it's
Right,
not, does it mean it's not pizza? Is a
right.
rice cake with sauce and cheese a pizza?
I
Where
like
do
when
you like? Where do
Mark takes a bite of it and goes, "This is really good," but it's not pizza, because it doesn't meet his definition of pizza. So, and I think it really comes down to how you define pizza. Because in the purest sense, you can be as pure as the Neapolitans and say a pizza has to be baked in a wood-fired oven and it has to be at this temperature and it has to be with this flour. Or you can open it up a little bit. And Americans, I think, are great at being able to see sort of a much bigger scope, and maybe we believe in pushing the envelope. And I think that's what you represent, that side of the argument, is that let's see how much we can extend this definition to being more inclusive, because no matter which form it takes, and that ramen pizza is a good example. It tastes really, really good, and it's a crust with something on it.
Yeah, well, I guess what's your definition of pizza?
Well, my starting point always is pizza is dough with something on it. And I say that, and so I have a very broad definition of pizza. I think that dough, and usually it's bread dough, but it doesn't have to be wheat. It doesn't have to be leavened, it could be unleavened, you know, it can be matzah for that matter. If it's dough with something on it, it sort of fits in the broad category of pizza. The word pizza itself, I think we tend to associate with Italian or Mediterranean styles of pizza, but pizza exists to me in every culture, but maybe under different names. Like I think a quesadilla is a type of pizza. I think a grilled cheese sandwich is kind of a type of pizza. Instead of dough with something on it, it's dough with something in it. But it has that same, it delivers that same level of enjoyment that a pizza does with when you get that crust with that crackly, toasty side with the melted cheese inside. I mean, how different is that from a pizza? And how different is the joy that it gives you?
Is the crackliness and crunchiness an important part for the definition?
For certain kinds of pizza, not all pizzas are crackly and crunchy, right? There's so
Uh,
many that are soft. I mean, that's why I think pizza is so fathomless, is that it can exist in a lot of different forms. And you've really seen more pizzerias than I have. You've traveled to many more locations. What I did was I sort of narrowed my search to places that I heard about that were doing something really extraordinary and breaking from the pack because I knew that my body couldn't handle going to as many pizzerias as you. You're a fast burner. I'm a slow burner. To burn it off and you're ready and you never gain weight. Me, I had to like work for months after each pizza trek to take off that weight.
oh,
So
yeah,
anyway,
but
I have less places that I've gone to, and you've seen much more variety. What do you think is pizza?
I, to me, it's, and this is where I'm fascinated by your definition because I think I agree with it, where dough with something on it, but I, that is as opposed to bread with something on it, which I'm actually curious to ask you about because to me, the fact that it's raw dough topped and then baked, that's to me what historically constitutes a pizza. But would you call something that is a baked product, like you mentioned matzah, something baked then topped? Is that a pizza?
Well, there are pizzas that are like that. Certainly, most frozen pizzas, many frozen pizzas are par baked or pre baked and then rebaked in the oven. And we still
Mm.
think of them as pizzas because they meet the other definitions. They may have red sauce and cheese, but how they got there was in a different process. And of course, all of these frozen pizzas are a more modern creation. So once again, I think a lot of it depends on where you grew up, what your exposures were. What about a kid who grew up with frozen pizzas before they ever had a pizzeria pizza? Their frame of reference is totally different.
Huh. I
So,
guess
so I
is
don't say bread with something on it. I say dough with something on it because the dough could be pre-baked, unbaked. It could be dough made from maybe non-wheat things. But if you grew up in Naples, your sense of what a pizza is totally defined by the kinds of pizzas that are made in Naples, which are great. It can kind of tend to also make you a little bit elitist, and I kind of fight against elitism when it comes to pizza. So the idea of the pizza rules, the true pizza Napolitana rules, while they're very important from a marketing standpoint to preserve a technique and a method, can also kind of create a false sense of what true pizza is. And I think that's part of the fun of it is that this debate it can lead to some pretty cool trash talking when you think about it. But in the end, it's really about what do we like? What for instance, we may have different styles of pizza that even you and I, even though we agree on a lot of the sort of broad definition of pizza, we may have styles that we prefer over other styles that we don't agree on.
Yeah, but I think preference is different from definition. And I think where preference, you can't argue with anybody about that. If I say I like something, you can't say, well, no, you don't. But with definition, and this is where I don't think there's a real answer. Of course, I think that the definition for the word pizza is there's a gradient and it sort of fades and it never totally vanishes. But
Yeah,
if you want to argue that a dumpling is a pizza, that's harder for me to do than
yeah.
to argue that a bagel with sauce and cheese is a pizza, which is harder to argue than a Neapolitan pizza. So I sort of have a center of the definition, and then it sort of it goes out and like the universe, it's constantly expanding.
Well, did you go on any of your treks with Mark? Did you go to any places that made pizza on bagels? Didn't I think you did go to one, didn't you?
We did. We did. We went to Baz Bagels in New York City, and they did a pizza bagel, which to me is a bagel and not a pizza.
Yeah.
It tastes like, but this is where the pizza bagel is a good example for this. Is a pizza defined by its construction or uh, by its like by the person eating it? You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
because
that's a good example. When I was a kid, they used to make in my elementary school, they called it American pizza. And it was a hamburger bun with some American cheese and a little bit of, spaghetti sauce on it. And they grilled it and they put it out and served, called it American pizza. And that was one of the first pizzas I ever had until we discovered our neighborhood pizzeria. And I said, God, this American pizza is pretty crappy. But I know what they were going for. They were trying to give you sort of a sense of this flavor profile. So that represented two very distinct, things. And so I hated the American pizza, and yet in a way, it met their definition of a pizza, which was dough with something on it. We could talk, and again, there's no answer because we could talk about this forever. And of course, you and Mark argued this point. Is it, sometimes you would agree that it tasted good, but also disagreed on whether it was actually a pizza or not. So let's talk more about this. Well, let's take a little break here. When I come back from this, we're gonna continue with Scott Wiener and talk about his own journeys in the pizza world. And also, I want to talk a little bit about two things that we haven't touched on. One is your pizza box collection. You've got like the world's largest collection of pizza boxes, and also your work with Slice Out Hunger, which I think is brilliant and has provided a lot of relief for people, but also pizzas for healthcare workers that are working out there on the front lines. And I want to hear more about that. So we're going to come back with Scott Wiener in a second on our next segment. You're watching Pizza Quest you're actually watching Pizza Talk presented by Pizza Quest. And we'll be back on the next episode.